Ladies and gentlemen, we're here on a Monday night. Hopefully, you got the notification because I'm not sure if this works on YouTube. Maybe they don't want anyone to watch the movie that we're going to talk about in Type 2. We got a couple of movies, very different contrasts of the films that we're talking about here tonight. One is, I think we're generally positive on, and one we're probably going to have a very lengthy discussion about why it's bad. So, joining me this week is my good buddy, Rob Mata. How you doing today, Rob?
Oh, pretty good.
And down below, Rob is our good buddy Rick Aragon. How you doing, Rick?
I'm still alive.
That doesn't sound like a glowing endorsement of life, but that's the word.
Well, I had my doctor's appointment today, so that's why the nurse practitioner verified that I'm still alive.
Yeah, we're just in a great place. I thought about taking some small vacations, some weekend vacations that I can, to some places that aren't far away but are cost effective as well too. I noticed that like airfare around this time of the year is a little bit down. I'm not sure if that has anything to do with demand or just the fact that they can't exactly get the amount of people needed to fulfill some of these flights, which is a little bit concerning. But I've flown with Delta over the last few years, and they haven't led me astray just yet. I can't really say much about all these other ones. So Delta, for the time being, seems to be a good bit. But yeah, I need to get out of the work machine that I've been in over the last few months and take a couple days off and just do something, literally anything else but this. So there you go. Well, we're here tonight because we got two big movies that I want to talk about. I know I'm being very facetious when I talk about a couple of these films, but I think we should start. It's hard to say to start this off on a positive note because we're going to talk about, I think, the movie that we kind of liked here, but the story about it isn't exactly as positive as a lot of people would believe here. It's that we're talking about The Sound of Freedom, and this is the one that everyone's been talking about for like the last week or so. I believe it originally came out about a week ago on a special preview, then it came worldwide in the last few days here. So I gotta go back a little bit to explain exactly what happened with this film. This is a film that came out, I think it was filmed back in 2018. So this is back when 20th Century Fox had initially had this movie, and it was under the Disney merger that Disney took over the studio and decided that this film's not coming out. So for a number of years, the filmmakers desperately tried to fight Disney to have this film see the light of day. Now, when you go back to the timeline, it's very suspicious how this whole thing ended up because when Disney took over 20th Century Fox, they shelved the film. This is right around the time that Jeffrey Epstein stuff was going on too. So this is right before Jeffrey Epstein hung himself in his cell where the cameras were off. So you have to look at the kind of the context around this. So the last thing that the media wanted at a time like this was a movie that was about human trafficking, especially child sex trafficking, that had undertones of people having their own private islands where they can do whatever they want, being connected with very people in high positions of power, stuff like that. They did not want this movie to come out whatsoever. So of course we had to fast forward 3 years after Epstein hung himself in his jail cell where the cameras are off. And now all of a sudden, Angel Studios is the one that's finally letting this film see the light of day. It got virtually no real coverage on TV media that I could have tell. I'm not sure if you guys saw any like commercials on TV for this one. This was a very viral marketing campaign. You saw people like Mel Gibson came out to told people to watch this movie. Dana White came out very recently saying that he's giving free tickets to his employees so that they can go see this movie. So this is a very, like I said, social media campaign driven film here. So we're trying to explain to people that people who have seen this movie, and then right after this movie came out, you started to get the hit campaigns. Now, the hit campaigns actually started way before this movie came out. Tim Ballard, who is the guy, the founder of the Operation Underground Railroad, the organization that this film is based off of, when Disney initially shelved this movie in 2018, there was hit pieces that came out almost immediately trying to smear the reputation of Tim Ballard. They were saying that, oh, he's QAnon. He's one of these right wing conspiracy theorists who thinks that, oh, he thinks that Hollywood and the government are a part of this child sex trafficking rings that he's been breaking up for God knows how many years now. And you also have to keep in mind, like I said, the context of this whole story, that this is happening at a time where there's there's a lot of eyes on this Jeffrey Epstein case, which has a whole lot of high profile, quote unquote, clients that we still don't know about officially as of right now. And you also have to look at the fact that this whole thing with like QAnon and like smearing them about this whole conspiracy theory, this literally came up at a time where all eyes was on this trial. So it's almost as if, people in the media not only tried to smear Tim Ballard for coming out with a movie talking about this, but they even tried to smear other people by saying, oh, these are these weirdo Trump guys talking about this thing that's actually happening right now in this trial that's going on at the moment. So seeing the reaction now from all the media outlets like Rolling Stones and all these other people just saying that, oh, this is a terrible movie. It's going to stroke the fires that people think that this is actually happening on like a mass scale. I know exactly why the media is doing this, but I'm going to ask you guys, what's kind of your reaction to the media's reaction about this film and why they're trying so hard to make sure that nobody actually sees this? Which they didn't succeed, thankfully, this weekend. But I'll start with you, Rob.
Yeah, I think it's weird because Hollywood generally doesn't turn away money. They're pretty interested in it. And I know that things get messy with mergers, things get forgotten about, things get shelved, priorities get realigned, but this is a really good movie. Like, we're not talking about your run-of-the-mill special interest Christian movie, okay? This is an incredibly well-made movie, and the fact that they sat on it for, 5 years? That, I'm sorry, I can't make any sense of that. You didn't want to put it on a streamer? You didn't, I mean, maybe that would have lost more money, but you didn't want to do something with it, an engaging movie about a hero who saves children? Like, I'm sorry, I don't get it. I really do not get it. It kind of reminds me of the 1970s when the public did not believe in public institutions. They did not trust them. They didn't trust the police. They didn't trust, these authoritative groups. And it kind of reminds me of what's going on right now. Tim Ballard has come out and said, look, from the start, I've never been associated or even believe in the QAnon conspiracies. They get in the way of the work that I did. In a lot of ways, where they want to connect something to Hollywood. When I'm talking about what's going on in Africa, I'm talking about what I've seen, these creepy sort of dark magic rituals or whatever. And so, like, there are people out there that want to discredit him. The Guardian article that came out was laughably ratioed. The Rolling Stone article or the review that came out was hilariously ratioed. I mean, there's enough people who have seen the movie and that have seen what's been going on the last 5 years to at least raise questions, to at least bring up, hey, by the way, guys, not Christian, not religious. My antenna's up now because I'm like, what the fuck is going on? We'll get into the movie, but there are very few movies that I've sat in a theater with like 2/3 full like that, where you can hear everybody crying and weeping and blowing their nose. Yeah. This is a really special movie, and I'm glad that it's getting this traction and this reaction.
Oh, you're right.
Well, I do wonder if this is something like a Streisand effect, because if it had just been released and just said, okay, this is not a good movie because, or the acting's not good, or it's too long, or this, that, or the other, yeah, you could have made a legitimate case and it maybe would have just faded away. But now you're attaching so much of, oh, it's QAnon, it's a right-wing conspiracy, it's just it's for crazy people by crazy people. What you end up doing is drawing more attention to it. And I had a similar experience that Rob did. That I went to the theater and it wasn't completely full; it was an early showing. The people around me were sobbing, were crying, and they were emotionally invested in the production. And yeah, we'll get later on into things like the performances and this overall story, but I think the press just kind of went, well, some in the press, not all, but some in the press just went overboard. That, yeah, the Guardian article, I don't think even reviewed the movie. It's more like, the writer's opinion about something that was not there. I don't think they never mentioned anything about QAnon or Pizzagate or whatever QAnon is. I'm not even sure fully what that what all that is. Rolling Stones, they compared how they praised cuties and condemned this. It just seemed, yeah,
Multiple outlets did that. It wasn't
hmm,
just Rolling Stones. It was like
yeah.
literally everyone who came out and said something bad about this film praised Cuties, and like they had
Washington
receipts to
Post was
compare.
guilty of this too. I don't know if you
Yep.
saw that. Yep.
It just seemed bizarre because you look, I take my duties as a reviewer serious. I review the movie, and yes, I can mention if it moved emotionally or if I saw the audience react to it. But if it's a subject that I don't like, I'm not going to spend my whole article saying, "Oh, I hate the people behind it because they disagree with me on XYZ." That's not what a reviewer does. That's not what a reviewer should do. The same place, I'm not going to praise a movie because it has a semi-religious bent, and I wasn't completely sold that this was a quote Christian movie. It
Well, and
has
Rick, you
certain
know this, that critics throughout history have fallen into this trap where they review the spectacle around the movie and not the movie. It happens throughout history,
Yep.
but it's a blatant example of that.
yeah
Well, first of all, just to address this one point, people out here are trying to say, "Oh, this is like a Christian extremist movie." I think Tim Ballard is Mormon, so first of all, he's not even Christian. So this whole idea that, like, and that's why I was like, people were talking about this being like a faith-based film. It's like I didn't really see it too many like faith elements like in this film, at
yeah
least avert one. Like I said, the guy who's doing this isn't even a Christian to begin with,
there
but
there are little
people,
bits there are little bits where it's like more like it's godly based because he says God's children are not for sale. That's the big
mhm.
tagline. So we're going to blame the conservative film buff for all this because he's Mormon. He's the one responsible.
Well,
He
that explains a lot. Moving on, but yeah, so this whole thing started with the way that I remember this whole thing starting was back in 2016 with the WikiLeaks email leak, right? So WikiLeaks dropped a whole bunch of emails from DNC members close to the Clintons during the time of the election and whatnot. And people started noticing that there was patterns in certain emails that seemed like it was code words for something that may have been related to child pornography. And these were actual code words that FBI agents and other police officers have identified. Like, yeah, these are type of terms that are used for this activity. So people started connecting the dots, saying that, well, I wonder if some of the people in the government are involved in this. And this is where you had the whole Pizzagate shooter at the DC, where a guy walks in with a gun, shoots up his gun in the air, doesn't kill anyone, is arrested, and then everyone just immediately stops talking about it. It's like, see what happens when you guys do conspiracy theories on the internet? Now guys are shooting up, and I stopped talking about it, and then we just stopped talking about it, and we just all moved on, right? Then a couple of years later, after that, this is when Jeffrey Epstein and was it Maxwell? I can't forget her first name. This is when they start getting lawsuits about some of the alleged activities that they were involved in. And it started snowballing to the point where there he was going to be put up on a bigger trial to kind of expose who he was involved with. And this is a guy who has known connections with people in Hollywood and governments all around the world. There's pictures and videos of him with these people. So he wasn't like this part of it wasn't no conspiracy theory. It was proven. And then, like I said, hung himself in a jail cell. Cameras are off, and then everything. Next thing you know, we're just done talking about this altogether too. Then somehow his girlfriend is guilty, and then we still don't know who she was selling people to to begin with. So you're wondering why these media outlets are so afraid of movies like this, and why they're trying so hard to discredit the people behind it and discredit this film. Let's be honest; they're working for the people who we suspect to be involved in these operations across the world. This is kind of my thing with the movie, and we'll talk about this here in a second. This movie is really tame when it comes to exposing the realities of child sex trafficking. I mean, they're talking about a drug cartel, the human trafficking that goes on in the southern border. Yeah, that's a big part of it, absolutely. But I mean, if you really wanted to get into the nitty gritty, you can talk about the type of sex trafficking that happens in Eastern Europe or in the Middle East or right here in the United States of America, or on some of these quote unquote private islands that we don't really talk about too much. If you really wanted to dig your nails in it, you couldn't have gone much farther than this. Then again, you probably would end up getting suicided in some fashion if you had mentioned some of these things, because the people who are involved in this do not want you to know that they are involved in this, because if we find out who these people are and what they actually do behind closed doors, the whole veil of our quote unquote reality, but the way we live our life smashes into pieces. And they don't want that, because, like I said, if you find out what people are doing behind closed doors, you may want to drag them in the street to the guillotine. But
I think
I'm not
if they
saying
had
I agree. No, I'm
No,
sorry,
no.
but I just wanted to say real quick. I'm not saying I agree with Jacob, but if anybody has seen Eyes Wide Shut and kind of digested what that movie had to say, and Stanley Kubrick died, just after turning it in, whatever. And then Chris Rock, remember Chris Rock said this a couple years ago. It's like, if regular people knew what rich people got up to behind closed doors, there would be blood in the streets.
Yeah. Oh, not only that, another movie just real quick. Remember Zoolander, the first Zoolander movie?
Yeah.
How that was basically just, mocking like the fashion industry. But you notice that they were talking about a lot of like MK Ultra stuff that was happening in the fashion industry. And then go ahead.
Ready to have your mind blown? So guess what? My favorite author, Bret Easton Ellis, wrote a book called Glamorama, which was about supermodels becoming terrorists, basically, because they could walk, they could get into any place, they could have the perfect cover, all this shit. And then he sued Ben Stiller, and Ben Stiller settled out of court because it was basically like ripped right from that book. And even though it's a comedy, even though we can laugh at that movie, dude, it's like, are you telling the truth in a stupid fucking comedy movie? Like, what the fuck?
You want to have your mind blown even further? The guy who wrote that film killed himself 2 years later.
Oh,
yeah, the guy who wrote Zoolander, the first Zoolander movie, is dead. Killed himself very shortly after that film came out.
That's a shame.
Killed himself. A self-inflicted gunshot wound.
That's wild, dude.
Well, yeah. Supermodels then, and now K-pop stars who can go through security without being checked. Dropping that in. Dropping that in.
We'll get to that one in a minute. We'll have a good old-fashioned beat down when that film comes out.
I will say this. Really quick. The way that people react when they read American Psycho, that was how I reacted when I read Glamorama. It terrified me. That shit terrified me. So I'm just, the fact that we're connecting all these dots right now is kind of surreal for me.
Especially when you compound that on top of the fact that, like I said, we just had the Balenciaga reveal came out last year that was saying some really dark stuff happening in the fashion industry. Like I said, the two industries that I see the most just outright evil emanating from is the fashion industry and the music industry. Like, that's what the two where it's like, it's so overt, you can't even pretend like it's not there.
Well, I would just say that in terms of storytelling, if they had tried to go into all these other human trafficking and child trafficking and child sex trafficking, it would have been too wieldy. I think it was a good choice, for lack of a better word, to just focus on the two siblings there, because it gave the audience a central point to focus on, versus just trying to cover a massive story. If you try to cover a massive story, you would need maybe like almost a documentary series. Narrow it down to one or two characters that could capture the whole everything that you want to talk about, and that will make it easier to focus audience wise, I think.
Yeah, and we'll get there with the flow of the movie, but they did that perfectly with how the movie ends, with both the the many as well as the individual kind of being saved and that token and everything. So
yeah. So let's talk about the film itself now. So the setup of this film is that we have, I wanted to get the guy's name right because he did play Jesus in The Passion of the Christ. Jim Caviezel.
Caviezel, yeah.
Okay.
Caviezel.
So he plays Tim Ballard in this film, and the film starts off with kind of essentially how these operations go in Honduras. You had a single father who has two kids, and a woman approaches him talking about, hey, you want your kid to be a part of this modeling agency or whatnot. So he trusts the woman with these kids, and they go up there and they take pictures and whatnot. He realizes that, hey, the kids have been gone for a while. Let me go see what's going on. Goes back to the building, and it's completely cleared out. Both his kids are gone. And this is how a lot of these operations happen. Like I said, I'm talking about fashion industry here and how the doors are broken into there. So we get introduced to $10, who's basically gone undercover to arrest a lot of these pedophiles. And he finds them, online. He waits for them to essentially like criminate themselves. He goes in for the arrest, and he said he's arrested about 200, 300 pedophiles up to this point. But then when he gets asked, well, how many kids have you actually saved? And he kind of like taken back because he realizes that, yeah, I haven't really saved any kids. I've just been arresting pedophiles. So now he gets the idea. It's like, well, let me go a little step further here and actually try to see if I can save, some of these kids that are just, around, the market and whatnot. So he arrests this guy. He ends up getting, I guess, a name and location for this one little boy. Happens to be the boy who was kidnapped earlier in the movie. One of the coyotes, or whatever you want to call them, is trying to smuggle a kid back into the United States. They grab him there, and then right at that point, he realizes that, hey, the kid has a sister, or reunited with the father, but it's like, I can't just give one kid back to this dad who's been completely tortured for God knows how long with none of his kids missing. It's like, I'm going to go into wherever this organization is and try to find this other kid, and that's kind of what propels this movie. So one thing I wanted to take noted just the very early part of this movie is that the acting in this film I thought was very, very strong. It doesn't try to like mix emotions or try to like do too much right away. It's a very straightforward film to the fact that when you're sitting there watching it, it really immerses you like in the story, because it's difficult to watch in the early portion of it because you see, kids being taking pictures of kids, very suggestive pictures, and you think to yourself, I mean, this is the type of stuff that goes on in these underbellies here. So right away, it really twists your stomach in a certain matter. This isn't an easy film to watch for a lot of people. Like I said, Rob said he saw people crying in his theater. I know there was people upset in my theater. Not a very easy film to watch, but I mean, you have to portray this as, hey, look, this is what actually going on. This is what we need to be more aware of. Rob, what do you think of kind of like the opening of the film, at least the setup of how they did this film?
I'll be honest, I actually missed the first 5 minutes. So I'm walking into a completely dark theater. Jim Caviezel already has the guy in interrogation. And like, I could barely find my seat. So like the atmosphere already is intimidating. And I sit down, and I like within the first couple minutes, I already have a knot in my stomach. And I listen, I like to watch disturbing movies. I like movies that take you to places that are uncomfortable, that make you wrestle with all kinds of difficult emotions of what human beings are capable of. Listen, this movie is not really graphic, but it is unbelievably disturbing. It is like it puts you on edge. Like there are so few movies that could actually put me in this place and make me feel that uncomfortable. Because some of the stuff Jim Caviezel has to say to convince this guy to give him information to find this little boy is just makes your skin crawl. So if you grew up watching Law and Order SVU, that's like a 3. This is like a 9. You know what I mean? It has great atmosphere. It has great cinematography. Jim Caviezel probably gives one of his best performances as Tim Ballard, as someone who's committed to, again, getting into the brain of these sick people so that he can save kids. And it doesn't help that the little boy, I know, yes, for all intents and purposes, I am a white man. That little boy looks exactly like I did when I was 3 or 4 or 5 years old. And so that part, it didn't even occur to me like, oh, he's going to be saved. The movie does such a great job holding you in those moments when he's with the pedophile, the fat ass. That actor, by the way, is really good. He's been in Mad Men, but the shit he says to the little kid is so disturbing. And then they grab him out of the van, and you feel that relief rush in. So I think the movie does such a great job putting you in each scene, giving you the perspective of the child who he's completely terrified. And the nurse says he has lacerations from sexual abuse. You see the room with the curtains drawn that he's in. I mean, it's just like they do such a great job not exploiting these things, but showing them in a way that says this is the reality for so many kids. And you have this man who will not stop at anything to at least try to save them after putting countless pedophiles away.
Well, it's a very delicate subject, and it has to be handled well. you certainly do not want to see any real violence towards kids or abuse. I think Rob and I online talked about what was that, Doctor Sleep, and I mentioned that I stopped watching right after the baseball, the baseball boy got killed. I said that's too much for me.
Mhm.
I can't watch this, so I stopped. Here, they handled those scenes very well when they're bringing uh, the younger brother into the United States, and just the look of sadness and terror with him when when he has to recite that horrible name, which would be kind of provocative to these people, and just his breakdown and his inability to look. Later on, when it's understood that the sister has been raped, for lack of a better word, you get enough. And this is what a lot of films now have lost, that sense of not needing to show everything, but giving us just enough to understand. You got to see the man, you got to see her reaction, you fade, and then you come back and you see the girl in the bathtub, and she's obviously very, gone through a very traumatic experience. You don't need to see, and you don't need to see everything. You understand. This film trusts the viewer to understand what is happening without you having to reveal so much, and it's very tough to even see those scenes, but it's necessary. This is what I mean when it says it's necessary for the plot. This has to be understood. You're in mute, by the way, Jacob. This has to be understood, but you don't have to be really graphic. Just give us the basic understanding.
And you have to understand that with a film like this, they had to tread lightly because they could
Mhm.
have very easily, shifted into NC-17 territory, which is not what they wanted. Because they wanted the film to be viewed, and they want to be viewed by a wide audience. And NC-17 is pretty much like a killer for a lot of distribution to begin with, so they had to tread that line there. And I think we'll get into this a little bit towards the end too. But I think something that Rob mentioned was very powerful too. It's like when you're watching this kid, it's like you're not even thinking to yourself, "Oh yeah, this kid's going to be saved." And then, looking at it from this perspective, it's like this film could have easily had gone in the opposite direction where the kid doesn't get saved, because they could have gone even further and be like, "Hey, look, this is also another side of the story where a lot of these kids don't make it out, and a lot of these kids don't bring it in." That's I think not deciding not to go with that right is an important path for this film, because when we get to the ending, the ending here is all about hope. There's that, even though we acknowledge that these bad things happen, even though that we understand that not everyone can be saved, there still needs to be an effort out there to save as many as you can. Because Rick always makes the joke that, oh, if it just saves one life, right? But it's like, well, this is one of those situations where if it just saves one life, then yeah, it actually is worth it, rather than the crap that we've been dealing with the last few years. So
Oh yeah, and that's one of the positives of this movie, is that it gives that audience that sense of hope, and that sense that yes, uh, these kids can be rescued, and yes, you can save these lives, and hopefully they'll go on to better lives, and hopefully they'll get the physical and psychological treatment that they would need to recover from these horrific
Can I?
experiences. Yes, go ahead, Rob.
but
No, I don't know. I just wanted to say that it's I don't know. It's first of all, I forgot what I wanted to say, but um,
okay,
it's
Spencer.
yeah, I know. But to have the thing is, most movies that are nihilistic about a problem, they
Mhm.
they like they kind of stay in that world. Like they almost never pivot to a hopeful, transition by the end. And that's what's so striking about this movie. This is incredibly difficult to do. This is something Hollywood doesn't even try to do anymore, where they present a dark truth, it could even be personal artistic truth, and that there's hope. There's some kind of gleaming, silver lining that you can hold on to that can carry you through those really dark, the Shawshank Redemption maybe comes to mind, but really
Yeah.
it's one of the rarest things that this movie accomplished. I know we haven't gotten into it yet, but just that stark contrast from it's an unbelievably dark reality, and guess what? There are still people trying to do the right thing and putting everything on the line to ensure that they can bring these damaged kids home.
Yeah, I mean, I know we'll talk about this later also, but you get that with his guide in was it Colombia or Venezuela, Vampiro, the American expatriate. You
Bill
get that.
Camp, yes.
Yeah, you get that, and we'll talk about that later. But you do get a great moment with him where he talks about that, and
Mhm.
that's one of the things that we really need in a film, especially one that tackles a very difficult subject. You can't give your audience a film and just say, it's all terrible, or there's no hope for these kids, there's no hope for this man or for his operation. No, you give audiences hope, and you'll feel that, what is it, catharsis, that release,
Yeah.
where you will feel, um,
Motivation, you can
yeah,
even say.
yes, you will feel that it is worth something. It is worth that this mission that this man has is worth something, because it does
And
have results.
I'll be honest, like I'll be just completely honest. There were probably 7 or 8 different times I had to wipe away tears, or like I couldn't stop crying
Yeah.
because of how powerful this movie is. Now again, maybe I'm, getting back to Pennsylvania and I'm in a fucked up state and just whatever, and this movie hit me at the right time. But seriously, I can't recommend this movie anymore. It really affected me sitting there and watching it play out, and it was really good. It was really good to feel hopeful, it was
Yeah.
especially going through all that fucking mud.
And then I'll say this. I mean, I think I know you somewhat, Rob, and you don't strike me as a particularly emotional person, where you wear your heart on your sleeve. Uh,
Don't
but
let the bad movie reviews fool you.
he's a
Well, see,
softie.
that's the
He's a
thing though, is
softie.
most movies aren't about anything. This is about
Yeah.
something so fundamentally, like uh, it's so fundamentally important, good versus evil, literally facing down the worst actions that are found in society and saying no, no, you're
And to,
disgusting.
to contrast a movie that we'll talk about here in a little bit, like Hollywood movies these days, the overwhelming majority of them are so divorced from reality that on an emotional level, you can't connect with anything that they're putting out anymore. So yeah, you're just sitting there, just kind of like, cynical and nihilistic, a lot of these films, because that's what they're giving you. They're not giving you any kind of reason to connect with you whatsoever. This movie actually gives you a reason to give a damn about what's on screen, and like I say, you have a completely different reaction to it compared to other stuff that we're watching here, because it's not just like the kids that you feel bad for. You feel bad for the officers that are involved in this as well, because they're the ones who have to sit down and watch hours of these horrific, disgusting videos, and they're just as mentally screwed up as the kids are, because it's like they've got kids of their own and they're thinking about their own kids, like what if this had happened to them, it's like what can I even like do it myself, and you just have that momentary like feeling of just powerlessness, because it's like you want to be able to do something right there and then, you just have to accept the fact that you can't, or at least not right now, that you can do anything. I mean, yeah, this film accomplishes something that Hollywood has not been able to do for God knows how many years, and because they don't even try to do it anymore.
Yeah, and you do get those moments, where I think, like, early on in the movie, one of the officers just says, when I'm going to leave this because this is too hard for me. And you
Mm-hmm.
have those moments where the brother is rescued, where another one of the kids that was abducted early on, when he's rescued on the island, and then when you get the sister rescued, you get, was it Bill? What's his name? Bill Camp. You get
Mhm.
his. He also works for redemption, which is why he's there. So you get these characters who you get moments of salvation, physical. I'm not talking spiritual, and you also get moments of redemption where you're trying to atone for what you've done, and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of hope, it's a good thing. That's why audiences were crying. I mean, it's also hard knowing that kids are getting involved, or being dragged and put in these awful situations. It's hard not for you to feel for kids, because kids are very important to us, even though none of us have kids. It hits the viewer hard, and I can only imagine what a parent who will watch this, how that would hit them, because
Yeah.
it's, that hit. I mean, it hit me, it hit Rob, it hit you, Jacob, it hit all of us, and none of us have children, not yet. But if it hit us, how could it hit a parent? And that explains,
Yeah.
for me, that's a reason why I think a lot of the parents around me, I'm assuming they're parents, were in tears. And I saw people, dabbing their eyes, and I could hear the sobbing. And
And not only that, but it's like that was an important portrayal in the film itself because Jim in the movie, like they present like his family, like his wife, who's very supportive of him. He's got like 5 kids, so he's coming up with like in a big family in and of itself, and that kind of keeps that little piece of humanity in there, where it's like, okay, I'm not just like fighting for my family, right? I'm fighting for something that's even bigger than me. Because look, he found like the kid, gave the kid back to his father. He could have just ended it there. It's like, hey, look, I got one kid, but I mean, we got to see what we can do about the other one, or maybe just out of control. He was like, no, look, I'm gonna bring back, this kid back to his father, because it's like if that was one of my kids and I knew that they were out there, and I knew that there was still a chance that I could save them. Like I would do whatever I possibly can to save that kid, whether it was my kid or not. And that's kind of like that realization that he hits there. It's like, yeah, look, this is dangerous. I can end up getting myself killed. My kids will have to grow up like without a father. My wife will have to go out with a husband. But it's like, for what we're trying to accomplish here, it's still worth it to at least try. You know what I mean? And that's that kind of like motivation that even when we look at like today and look at a lot of the dark things that are going on here, we need that motivation that, yeah, things can be very, very screwed up. Things can be very, very dark, but there has to be a light at the end of the tunnel, because if not, then what are we even doing here at this point?
yes,
If we just
exactly.
completely give up.
And he's reminded of this. I mean, he rescued the brother. And then when he rescued all those other kids on the island, that's
Mm-hmm.
when he's told, you hear that sound as they're clapping and drumming. That's the sound of freedom. That's where they get the title. And even though he goes further in to rescue the sister, he has to be reminded also that you've already done so much in saving all of these kids.
Yeah.
Don't feel the I guess he felt the pressure to go and save the sister, but you've already done so much now, and so many of these kids are going to get their life back because of what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Take a moment and rejoice in that sound of freedom that you've given these kids through your
And
actions.
it could have been done so hacky and so on the nose. It could have been done. This is embarrassing, and it wasn't. It was like a heartfelt moment of what you've accomplished up to this point. And even though the sister wasn't wasn't with
There.
those kids or whatever at the sting, it's like and that's again, well, like I was saying at the end, when they have the individual as well as the bigger picture of these are all the kids you saved, and this is what you did to reunite, this family, these siblings. So it's not a small thing. Again, it's having the faith, by the way, it's having the faith that it's all going to come together and work because the story you're telling is worthwhile and important.
Yep.
Hmm.
Shocker. It's almost like a concept that's completely, out of the realm of a lot of our creators in Hollywood. By the way, this film was, I believe, written and directed by the husband of Ali Lauder, who's a name that I haven't heard in quite some time, but apparently, yeah, she's involved in there somehow in doing this movie. So, hey, I guess there's that. Yeah. So, I mean, there was one point that I wanted to here. Okay, so one of the issues that I guess some people in the media had, just why there was getting so many QAnon comparisons here with this film, is because that they can watch the film and see that there's definitely connections or parallels to be had here to the Jeffrey Epstein situation, because you had the woman in the very beginning who's the one that it was kind of like the front woman of the operation, where she talks with the parents to kind of like let the parents like give up the kids and whatnot, and then she goes to her bosses, and then she does that. There's a lot of parallels to the Jolene Maxwell position, where she was kind of like the front woman for Jeffrey Epstein, pulling in these women to whatever dark stuff that was going on behind the scenes, like over there. You had, of course, the setup of towards the end here, where they're trying to rescue not only the girl but like the multiple kids that are stuck on this island. It's a private island. You have to have a lot of money to have this private island, and of course people were saying, oh, it's an allegory to Epstein's island, right? So it's so here's what the weird part to me. I can understand why the media lies to us about this, because like I said, they work for the people who are involved in situations like this. I don't understand the reaction or the anger from people who have no skin in this game whatsoever. Like, there's a bunch of people on Twitter. Like, I think I was looking at a thread earlier today. People were attacking the Critical Drinker because he did a review about this movie, and people were saying like, "Oh yeah, of course he would do a review of this movie." It's like, why are you angry? Like, why are you upset about a film that exposes child sex trafficking? Like, what skin do you have in the game that would be your first reaction of just anger and disgust? It's like, are you just that blinded by the media that whatever they tell you to be angry about, that's what you're angry about? Like, do you have like no actual like thoughts like in your brain that of your own? Like, have we gotten to this part of the discussion? Like, that's the one thing that I just don't understand about some of these people.
I don't
Some
either.
people are brainwashed. Some people just reject anything that they view as, a right-wing fantasy. So even
but it's like, but just real quick, it's like you don't even like pull yourself back a little bit and think to yourself, I'm upset about people trying to expose child sex trafficking. It's like, maybe I'm in the wrong in this scenario, or maybe I should think about, why am I actually upset about this? Like, why me, just Joe Blow living in like Portland, Oregon somewhere? Why am I upset about this movie? Why am I upset about this situation being exposed like to the public? It's like there's no like gear turn like whatsoever with some of these people. It just astounds me that people just don't see that.
Yeah, I
But
mean, you
closing-
have, and not to interrupt, I just want to say real quick, you have people from like Olympia, Portland, Oregon, these people that just want to like oppose anything they view as traditional or, you know what I mean? Anything that's Christian, anything that's quote unquote right wing or conservative, even if it's that whole like, I believe in the devil because to piss Christians off, and it's just like you're just performing for people that don't care or the devil potentially. So these are stupid people, and they're no different than the talking heads on TV that are writing the movie reviews for Rolling Stone apparently.
Well, no, I echo what you said, Rob, because I was going to pretty much say the same thing. I think there's just this knee-jerk reaction that if it's even vaguely suspected of being quote right wing or conservative or Christian or what have you, you have to oppose it, and you have to say, "Oh, it's wrong. We can't support a movie like this." I would say to all those people, first, watch the movie itself rather than just jump to conclusions about what it is. Second, as for them attacking the critical drinker, it's a surprise because maybe they don't expect to take him seriously, and it's hard because I do watch some of his videos. He seems to be very sarcastic, usually with was it the superhero movies and these genre films. So maybe they weren't expecting him to look at something that's supposed to be very dramatic and far from the MCU or the DCU as possible, his usual forte. And the fact that he liked it, maybe they just were kind of venting on him and saying, how could you like something that we don't like, even though we've not seen it, just because we oppose quote unquote the Christians or we oppose the right wingers. It just seems strange to me to have that kind of mindset.
I think some of these people are just so sheltered, and I think a big part of that is like they're so consumed with like the world, they don't want to see it for what it truly is. Like, I had this conversation maybe like a month ago about I was talking to this woman, and we were talking about like a lot of things that are happening right now. We're talking about the plans with like the W, the World Economic Forum, and they're talking about putting restrictions on like gas stoves and what this is going to lead to or whatnot. And then in the course of having this conversation, she just starts crying, right? Because I don't think it ever hit her the reality of just how sinister some of these people like truly are and whatnot. And I mean, look, I felt bad. I wasn't trying to like break her down and make her cry, but it's like some of these people are so attached to the world where it's like they don't want to have the veil lifted over their face to realize just how evil some of these people are, just how sinister some of these people are, even if their agenda directly affects them, right? Like, these are some of the things that, hey, maybe you should be paying attention to this because this is going to directly affect you in the next 5 or 10 years and things that need. People don't want to look at that stuff like that. They want to bury their heads in the comic book movies and the video games and stuff like that, because making them realize exactly what world they live in, it's almost like kind of like, I don't want to say that MK Ultra type things. We made fun of it earlier, but it's like it kind of snaps them out of that reality that they just don't want to accept. It's kind of a rough position for a lot of these people to be in.
I kind of felt like that's why the movie was so upsetting to me. It's not that I denied that this was a reality, but it's seeing it as a reality, seeing it like up close and personal and shot the way it is. It's incredibly disturbing. And it's like, I don't want to say it was a spiritual experience or anything, but it's almost like you're waking up to the reality of at least part of the world, and this has gone on since the beginning of time, probably. And that's what's so shocking.
I mean, look,
then that white pill of there is hope.
Yeah, and look, this has been, kind of a rough journey for me, because, I mean, you talk about this all the time, Rob. It's like we grew up kind of like this idea of what we viewed Hollywood to be when we were watching movies and watching television shows. We were kind of in that bubble of where, they're just making like entertainment, funny shows and action shows. Like that's all they're really doing. Like there's nothing like anything else going on. But then the more I've seen, especially over the last 10 years, I've had to come to terms with a lot of the things that's like, okay, well, maybe that this industry isn't just about making movies and television shows at a good heart. Maybe there's actually some more stuff going on here that aren't exactly pleasing to the soul. It's kind of have to, I guess, accept like that reality that this idea of Hollywood that I had isn't exactly what reality is. I think even Tucker Carlson talked about this a few months back when he was talking about being in the media. And it's like when he's in the media, you kind of have this idea of like what he does. It's like, I'm just informing people about the news, and that's all that I'm really doing. And then he had to have that hard look at himself. It's like, oh yeah, I was in the media for all these years and I was part of the problem. Like I didn't see the problem back then, but now looking back on it, it's like, oh yeah, that was me. Like I was the guy that I was complaining about for all these years. And it's kind of like, oh crap. It's like, you kind of have that old crap moment when you realize exactly how things really are. So,
well, I take a maybe slightly different view of that. I think part of it is that a lot of the creative types, writers, directors, actors, producers, don't see their job to entertain. They don't. They think it's somehow,
especially now.
Yeah, they think it's somehow beneath them because they should be doing something more lofty. That really they should use their television and their films and their books to enlighten us, to make us better people, to reshape us into good beings. And by good beings, it means supporting things like climb the Green New Deal and gun control, or be pro-abortion up to past the moment of birth or what have you. Anything that you can come up with. I think that's their idea. I don't think that I don't want to say that they're deliberately putting in propaganda. They might be, but I think that's their goal. Second, I think there's this shift in society that really wants to infantilize people. That's why you get all of these live action cartoons. That's what the DCU is. That's why we always call it the world's longest.
I mean, yeah, we've been calling that out with the Marvel Cinematic Universe for years about them doing that. I mean, the fact that you go to these movie theaters and you have 30-year-old men, 40-year-old men watching these movies, and they're screaming like they're in a roller coaster ride. And it's like you look around, it's like, I don't really see any children out here acting like this. Like these are all like 35-year-old dudes. You kind of realize it's like, are we turning like adults into children again? It feels like it.
We are. And then the worst part is, and I know we've talked about this at other times, when these grown men who have children, I mean, who've actually managed to reproduce, when they're crying in the theater when these fictional characters die. And I just sit there sometimes in sort of stunned disbelief. I'm thinking, they're not real. Why are you crying? I mean, it's different.
That's the thing that angered me about Infinity War the most. It's like when Spider-Man dies, everyone's crying, going, oh my God. It's like, he's gonna be back. Like they're literally filming the next movie with Spider-Man as this is happening right now. It's like, why are you crying as if you're never gonna see this character again? Like it made.
But
no
it's
sense.
also CGI. This is the other thing too that I've attacked for years is that
Yeah.
it's airless bullshit. It's digital crap. The thing
Yeah.
about this movie we just saw this weekend, Sound of Freedom, it's a real movie and it deals with real themes, real issues. It has real characters. It has something you can sink your teeth into, and I cannot stress that enough. There are no movies coming out of Hollywood now. Granted, later this year, I'm selling out. 2020, the rest of 2023 is going to be great, just because all these great directors have movies coming out. Now, they might all be shit, so maybe I'll eat my words, but Sound of Freedom is actually about something. It's a real movie, unlike all the other shit that we've had to endure the last 44 episodes of this fucking podcast. Not the podcast, the fucking movies. But I'm so glad this movie exists. I'm so glad it's out there. The acting is fantastic. You have you have real characters, you have purpose, you have stakes. I can't recommend it enough. And again, just I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad it's doing well. But God, Hollywood, please get back to storytelling. This is compelling. People want heroes.
But here's the problem there. You have to remember that this is a movie that Hollywood did not want to release. They tried everything they could to, like, Disney could have released this movie 4 years ago if they really wanted people to see this. They didn't want no one to watch this movie. And you notice that no other major studio wanted to pick this one up too. I mean, Warner Brothers could have thrown money at it and picked this film up. Paramount could have thrown money and picked this film up. Sony could have done something. No other studio in Hollywood wanted this film out. That's why Angel Studios had to be the one to distribute this movie.
Yes, and just kind of to draw a bit on what Rob said, the reason that this movie is probably one of the better ones that we've seen is because it's not fantasy. We've seen a lot of these fantasy movies. You can't get emotionally invested in The Flash or in Shazam or in Indiana Jones or in Ant-Man or in not John Wick, even though we all like that one, but we still know that it's fantasy. Well done, but again, a lot. This is as close to a story that actually has that takes place in the real world. We've seen too many movies that are just fantasy, pure fantasy, and they don't take anything seriously. Here you do. Here you do realize, hey, these kids are in danger. Hey, these investigators are going through their own issues. Hey, these former drug cartel accountants and kingpins, they also realize that they've also done terrible things and they're looking for a way to redeem themselves. And again, not spiritually, because I don't think Vampiro, he's called Vampire. I don't think he is looking for spiritual salvation, but he's looking for atonement. He's looking for some kind of forgiveness and redemption. And doing this is, in effect, doing the Lord's work, if that's how you want to define it, even though he's probably not a religious person. But he's looking for, his own sense of redemption. So this movie is made for adults, and it tackles difficult but necessary themes. Like I wrote in, like I tweeted out after I saw the movie. It's a film about a little talked about or little known but important subject. This is an important subject. All these other movies that we've seen, they don't have that kind of stakes, and the movie that we'll talk about later has no stake about that either. So that's why it hits people more.
And I just want to say here, the creepy hyena acting coke fiend like guy, the villain, one of the guys they arrest, like who helps kind of put this together. He did a great job being an absolute creepy piece of shit, where he's like constantly cackling because he's high on coke and making jokes and shit. And also there are moments when the movie is actually funny. Like Jim Caviezel says, and it's in the vein of like capturing criminals and putting them away. But it's like the audience laughed. Like there were moments of levity too. So I mean, and Bill Camp as a Vampiro is great, chomping on his cigar. I mean, he has an amazing monologue, which I think you talked about. And then Jim Caviezel confronting the lawyer dude, the guy who's protecting the sex traffickers, where he basically stands between him and the little boy, almost getting his head blown off in the process. like that was a great scene because there's just real tension there. You don't know what the hell's going to happen.
You know,
So again, there is a lot of really good things about this movie. And just from start to finish, I think it's well executed.
for me, I mean, maybe I misunderstood Caviezel's take on it. I thought he was a little maybe too stoic, but that's just my view. I would say the MVP is Bill Camp because he
Mhm.
managed to bring moments of humor into this, but he also gives that wonderful, wonderful monologue where he talks about how he picked up what he thought was a like a 21-year-old, and it turned out to be 14, and it just tore at him, and that's when he started realizing, make that change, and that's why I, buy these kids, but then set them free. So I'm kind of playing both sides. And for me, that was, I think, the standout performance, acting wise. And it's kind of strange. The guy that they got to help, fund this private island, that's the producer, Eduardo Verástegui, and he's not there enough. I mean, he's a very small part, but it worked. And the kids, the two kid actors, I thought did a pretty good job. Again, it must be very difficult to put kid actors in those kind of things, but the director and the producers did very well in giving us again just enough to make us understand what we saw. Maybe the one drawback, and yes, I agree, it is a good haircut. The one drawback is Mira Sorvino's barely in the movie.
Yeah,
When I saw her credited, I was like, she was in the movie. Where?
yeah,
I
she was
don't
the
remember
wife.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, where was she? I hardly ever saw her, so that might have been a misstep. But apart from that, this is really one of the better films that I've seen this year. Because again, we haven't seen all the films, and there are some that I know that we're all looking forward to, and some that we're not looking forward to. But
and I just want to say to I look, again, this is another moment that could have been played up and not done well or not been executed well, but the whole, the little brother giving the necklace, and then to his sister, and then finding it again, and then being reunited, like that absolutely got me. Like I thought that was a really great through line throughout the entire movie. To have faith in this man, to find his sister, that she's going to come back, that she's going to be there again. That that was a great emotional moment in the movie. So there's a lot here to really like. I wanted to give it a 3.5 out of 5, just as a, trying to be fair. But I actually bumped it up to a 4 out of 5. It's probably my third best movie of the year, just behind Beau is Afraid and The Master Gardener, by Paul Schrader. So I really liked Sound of Freedom. I highly recommend it to anybody.
I was gonna go 4 out of 5 too, but the one thing that made me bump it up slightly more was the fact that it did end on a high note, and it did end with a message of hope rather than a message of just despair. And because of that, because we just don't get too many films like this throughout the year, I had to give it an extra little bump. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5. It's still my top three. I'm not sure if I give this my top movie of the year, but it's definitely in my top three movies I've seen so far this year. Screw everyone else in the media telling you that this is a QAnon conspiracy theory. They know what's going on here. Go watch this film while you have the opportunity. It's already made $42 million on like a $14 million budget initially when it was produced a number of years ago. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer here. This is one of the best movies we've seen so far this year.
I will say that in terms of storytelling, this was well done. Maybe a little longer than I think it should have been, but I like the fact that the movie basically starts and ends in pretty much the same way, where we go down, the camera goes down to focus on the little girl, and then at the end of the movie, once she's rescued, it pulls back and we see her, kind of a full circle type storyline there, which I appreciated. I can I also appreciated the effect that it had on the audience. I'm someone who, when I review a movie, also don't just look at it. I also see how it affects the audience because they're the ones that judge a film based on what they see. So I saw how people reacted to it. They were pulling out their phones to get that QR code, and I appreciated the countdown to the special message. I wish they would do that at those MCU movies so that we'll know if we have to stay for a close, post credit scene or not. That was my first thought. But yes, I think this is one of the better made films. Maybe a little long, but I mean, for me, I'm going to give it maybe. I'll probably be less generous than you guys. Maybe a 3.5. Um, I could maybe bump it up to a 4. I'm just going to be blunt. I'm just going to reveal. I'm going to when it comes to the Online Film Critics Society, I'm going to submit Bill Camp's name in the supporting actor category. I think he did that good of a job. So yeah, this is probably the one of the better. This is certainly one of the better films that I've seen, and they handled a very delicate subject well. So I congratulate them. And as for the QAnon thing, look, most of the audience probably doesn't even know what QAnon is. I've heard of it, but I have very little idea of what it is. So they're not going to consider it. They're not going to consider some sort of crazed right wing.
Like I said, it's a convenient smear to the truth and the reality of what's going on. Like I said, there's a reason why these media companies are coming out so hard against this film. It's not just because they think that it's a right wing conspiracy theory. Because if it was, they would have just ignored it.
Yeah. Two final things is I think the score, the music, setting the atmosphere of the movie was really good, was really sad and haunting. And I will say that apparently the real Sting rescued way more children in reality. So that's another sort of white pill you can, stick that feather in your cap, because that's a great feeling too.
The budget could only afford a certain number of kids there, Mr. Motto. So
no, I get it.
I know, but hey, that's even better news. Anytime that you can rescue kids from a life of slavery, sexual or any kind of slavery, that's a good thing. And I don't know why people would be so upset about a film that draws a light on a serious subject.
Bunch of marks. That's what it is. So yeah, strong recommendations for Sound of Freedom. Definitely go watch it while you still have the opportunity to go watch it in theaters right now. It's making a killing, and rightfully so. So we got the positive out of the way. So let's switch gears and talk about this absolute dumpster fire train wreck of a movie. Now, Chris Gore, who I like, he was on the bar room a few weeks ago. He recently put out a video saying that he liked this movie and it was one of his favorite movies of the entire year. And when I heard him say that, I wanted to fly out to Los Angeles and shake him like a baby when I heard him say this. Let's rewind here just a little bit. Remember I told you guys a few weeks back that I made this film my number one worst movie of the year, and I was waiting to see if it was worthy of being knocked down a peg or two, because I saw the trailer of this. I know who's involved. It's Seth Rogen. I've absolutely learned to despise Seth Rogen and anything that he does in Hollywood these days. As much as I love Taylor Sheridan as a screenwriter, I despise Seth Rogen and anything that he's producing, writing, anything that has his fingerprints on it is just going to be god awful. So I knew that this was coming, right? And then when we watched The Blackening a few weeks back, I was like, "Whew, man, this movie is going to have to be really bad in order to beat The Blackening." I mean, that's a high bar. I didn't think it was going to happen. I really thought, like, man, that Blackening, I don't see anything being worse than that. It only took like 2 weeks, and then we got this movie. There's so many things that I could complain about. Rob, apparently you only made it a little bit further than I did. Rick apparently actually watched the entire film, and I have no idea why, but we get into this film, and like I said, I'm going in here with absolute low expectations of this movie. Like, in my mind, it's like a movie that's worse than the movie I previously saw couldn't possibly exist. And then I think the first line, correct me if I'm wrong here, the first line in the film was like, "Fuck me, look at all these white people." That was like the first line in the movie, and I was like, okay, strap in. This is going to be a long one. So the setup to this movie, if you guys haven't seen it, it's 4 Asian women, 4 Chinese American Asian women. The setup is that you have one Asian girl who's raised by a white family, one Asian girl who's raised by an American Asian family. They fast forward about 30 years later. The one that was raised by a white family is like a successful businesswoman, while the other one is making penis art in her backyard because she's a burnout. and who's a sex positive burnout. So I was just rolling my eyes as we go along here. But the setup there is that they need to go to China for some business deal. So they take their cousin Deadeyes, who may or may not be non-binary. It was never really clarified. I just assumed that it was. And then they go find this like Chinese actress who I guess is some kind of like sex addict. She's just absolutely obsessed with sex, and she's dating some Christian boyfriend in the course of.
Can I jump out the window yet? Can I jump out the window?
Not yet. We're getting there.
Okay.
But it's like it's one of those films where it's like I didn't laugh once. I don't even think I felt my face like make a frowning facial that could have been interpreted as a smile at any point in this movie. Like the entire time, I'm just rolling my eyes, and it got to a point where I think we jumped to the orgy scene at the hotel where the basketball players, where I looked at my watch. I was only about 40-50 minutes into the movie, and I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. But Rob, you made it a few more minutes more than I did. So what's your thoughts on Joyride? I don't know where you want to begin. Take it away.
Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to start in a general street here. Okay, so I grew up with the raunchy sex comedy movie, boys being boys stuff. And look, there's varying degrees. There's good ones, there's bad ones, whatever. It's a trashy genre. I get it. Like listen, I like stuff that's raunchy or messed up or fucked up or whatever, but it's got to have you got to have a reason for it. You got to have actual characters. You have to have an actual story. You can't just be like, oh, hey, we want to show a minority group of American women as being free sexual degenerates who are, even in their sexual degeneracy, never made the joke. They're constantly like being celebrated. It's the men, again, the men who are the joke, or they get injured through their orgy. And it's like all the elements of the raunchy sex comedy that have worked in the past, none of those elements work here. And so it's just this celebratory, degenerate kind of, hey, women can just be as disgusting and as into sex as men can. And it's supposed to be, I guess, progressive, but it comes off as annoying, like nails on the chalkboard, sort of like obvious bullshit. And so I don't even know. I don't know what you're laughing at. It's women being crass and dirty and disgusting without any kind of satirical, and without any kind of like satirical commentary that makes sense or that resonates. So I thought the lead, she's not bad. Like she's okay, but then past the orgy scene, she's just insufferable.
I said the film made you hate her as the film went on, so even that was thrown away.
Where does it's like it goes into left field where she wants to fuck two guys. It's like they don't even lead up to it. It just is like, oh, okay,
exactly.
Her fat friend who can't act, she's terrible. Is like a lesbian, but she wants to fuck Baron Davis. It's that made no sense. It was like they're setting her up like this like butch dykey lesbian, but she talks about I was thinking about a penis. Oh, you're thinking about a dick. Got it. Like, and that's supposed to be a funny line. By the way, all of her lines are terrible. Like the only time I laughed in the movie, I think, was like at the chick's boss, who's like yelling at some guy playing racquetball, but that was about it. It was really
just real quick to show you just how completely like terrible the writing is in this film. They kind of set her up to be like the responsible one in like the group. It's like, even if you're going to have that dynamic where she's more responsible, but like everyone else is like a disgusting degenerate, okay, fine, but you have to commit to that bit. And then, like I said, 40 minutes in, she's being blown out by two different basketball players. So it's like, okay, so everyone's just a fucking degenerate in this movie. So there's
and look, her Chinese boss looks down on her because she has no relationship with her Chinese parents. So she basically lies to her boss and says, oh yeah, I'm really tight with my Chinese mom. And so there's that part of it. And then
just real quick, it's the element, and we'll talk about this here in a second. This is like this element of, oh, you were raised by white parents. You're not really Asian. You're fake. You're white. It's like that really like that is like it's kind of not degrading, but just kind of condescending like race relation that you see a lot from progressives. It's like, oh yeah, you're not really authentically Asian, even though you really look. You're talking about a movie here that made the Asian girl raised by white parents significantly more successful than the Asian girl raised by Asian parents. And now you try to criticize throughout the course of the movie that, oh, she's acting too white, she's not Asian enough. It's like, so you want her to be the one living in the backyard making penis art? Because that's what you're telling me in the course of this movie here.
Well, it certainly is divorced from the stereotype of Asian parents who are constantly pushing their children to be successful. I mean, that is why we had, what is it, the battle hymn of the Tiger Mother, and it was Asian students that brought that lawsuit to the Supreme Court that ended affirmative action. It was not white students; it was Asian students who brought that in. So yeah, we've heard that before. I'll say this much. First, this move, I've read reviews from people that I do follow on Twitter who said that they thought it was hilarious. They couldn't stop laughing. And Sherry Cola, the fat woman, as you keep calling her, Roberto, your generation's Carol Lombard. She
Oh, she's not our generation's Mama Cass. You were gonna go for that easy layup?
No, not Mama Cass. Come on, Mama Cass could sing, and she did a couple of like TV spots.
Ham sandwich.
Oh no, that's a myth. Stop it, Roberto. Stop.
Sorry,
it.
Austin Powers. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, that's terrible. I love Mama Cass. Look, the movie is not funny. I know the audience was laughing uproariously when the little Chinese girl goes up to them and it goes up to the white kid who obviously is so racist that he says, "Well, is it no ching chongs or whatever here," and she just curses him out, punches him, and then he gets hit, flies out by a little girl who's on a swing. Because of course, what's funnier than having preteens or children curse? I mean, well, that's comedy gold.
That's Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen, his last movie that he produced was the film Good Boys, where he basically had like the elementary age kids doing a whole bunch of degenerate stuff, like swinging on sex swings for laughs.
Yeah, but everything about this movie is just terrible. The characters are so cliched because we're always going to have the quote responsible one and the immature one, and then kind of the hanger on. I was thinking about how if they're trying to use maybe like The Hangover as their template, do they not realize that we don't laugh at the guys because we think that they're funny? We laugh at them because we think they're morons who are still trying to figure things out, and they're not acting as adults. That's the whole comedy bit there. This movie is not funny. I didn't laugh once. I was horrified many times. It's slightly it's I would say it's pretty racist because of course it assumes that that Allison, I think that's the actress's name, the adopted daughter, that she would pick the one car that had the white person there because obviously the white person is not going to do anything. That's not going to be a criminal. I said, no, obviously she is going to be the criminal. And by the way, all that cocaine would have killed them right away. Yes. It would not have survived. They would not have survived. But it was racist, and it was racist against I think Asians as well. Because like
I said, they have the girl raised by an all Asian family and living in the backyard making penis art, and they're trying to portray her as if somehow she's the most loyal to the Asian race out of anyone else in the entire movie.
It's almost a bizarre comment on saying, look, if you're Asian, if you're adopted from China and you're raised by white parents, you're actually going to grow up to be more responsible. You're going to grow up to be a lawyer. Than you are if you're raised by Asian parents who spoke English but decided that
it's basically them saying, "Yeah, you'll be more successful, but you won't really be Asian." It's like,
well, it's weird though because it's almost like they're saying multiculturalism is better than this sort of long-held traditional excellence through the stereotype of Asian cultures. So it's very weird. It's like,
It
oh,
is.
the person that had, white parents and, Asian genetics turned out better than somebody that was, that was
Right.
Asian with Asian parents. It's a very weird sort of commentary there.
And the thing is, the white parents, when they go up to the Chinese parents, I mean, they're actually doing a good thing because they're trying to show their daughter, hey, look, you can play with someone else. They're not telling her don't play with the white kids. They're saying, hey, look, here's someone who is also of your background. Maybe you can find a greater connection than we as non-Asians can bring you, because we'll always have that kind of limitation. They
That
were not horrible
family,
people.
that family, it was the worst representation of an Asian family I can possibly. You want to know a good representation of an Asian family? This is a good representation of an Asian family right here. They're beating the crap out of their kid because he's doing video games instead of doing his homework. That's the Asian community that I remember.
That's the tiger mom right there. The battle
Yeah.
hymn of a tiger
You hear
mom.
that? You think that their Asian family would be happy knowing that their daughter is a burnout at 36 years old living in someone's backyard?
Yeah. All of them. They're just, I would say that this is so mean spirited and unpleasant, unfunny. I actually thought that Deadeye was the lesbian, not
Yeah,
Lolo.
and Rob
I
had
think
mentioned
she's
something about that
autistic.
too. How they, you never know with Hollywood, they could be both. I mean, it could be autistic and non-binary, so that's like 2 check boxes there. And gay, you can also be gay too. So it'll be like 3. You have like 5 victim cards in one hand.
When she's yelling on the train, when she's just yelling on the train for like no or whatever, I was like, this is a fucking awful movie. Holy shit. Like both the drug scene and the quote unquote sex scene, I was just like, this movie's utterly fucking. I can't say what I want to say, but yes, it's utterly fucking stupid.
So
I'll say that the reason I stayed is because I never walk out of movies. So
yeah, well, it was playing on my computer, so there you go.
I didn't hear that.
So here's the thing. Like when it comes to Seth Rogen, he's a one-trick pony. He was a guy who got to prominence based on what was it, the Pineapple Express movie that people liked, what was it, 15 years ago, and then all of a sudden he started just recycling the same type of material over and over again. It's like once you realize that, oh, this is his shtick, then nothing else he does afterwards is funny. It's like I said, 75% sex jokes in this movie because we're still using the Amy Schumer method of humor of like, oh, if women say very disgusting sexual things like men do, then it'll be funny. It's like, no, if men were talking like this, it wouldn't be any more funny than it would be with women at all.
Exactly.
15% racist jokes. Like I said, the whole thread here is that, oh, they're all Asian women, so we have to bring up the racial differences between Asians and white people as if somehow they're on like opposing sides of some kind of mess.
There were some elements that were really bad, and I'm sure that the writers, when they wrote it, thought it read funny, but when you actually see it and portrayed, it's bad. Like when they're at that racquetball and she says, "Oh, I appreciated that Mulan themed birthday party." I'm thinking it must have read funny to them when they wrote it. It's like, oh, it's hilarious. But the way it was delivered was bad, and it was obvious and forced. B, it's not funny. It's just not funny. The idea of a Mulan themed birthday party. I think any sensible person would have said that's just tacky, regardless of what it is. I mean, it was just really bad. And there's something that people I don't think are really talking about. The big plot twist here, spoiler alert, is that the main character, that she's not actually Chinese. She's Korean. And then that's why they had to go to Seoul and try to find the birth mother, and that's why they had to pretend to be a K-pop band, which is just horrible.
So in other words,
I
you're saying is that
I skipped through. I didn't stop. I skipped through at the 56-minute mark, and I saw a lot of what looked like AIDS. So I was like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't finish this.
No, I was just going to say just real quick. So you're telling me that the entire plot of like the first hour of this movie was completely and utterly pointless because she wasn't even from where they thought she was from to begin with.
What happened was that they that the Korean birth mother went to China because her parents were ashamed. So she had gotten, pregnant by her teenage boyfriend. So she went to China to give birth there, and then she was adopted. So apparently it was just assumed that she was one of these Chinese girls that was adopted. And let's remember, the reason we had a lot of Chinese girls adopted was because the Chinese government was killing them rather than having more than one kid or having a
Here's the
girl.
thing. Like, that doesn't even make any sense in and of itself. So it's like, oh, she didn't want to live with the shame of being a teen mother, so she goes to China because she doesn't outlive her shame. Like, here's the thing. I'm pretty sure there's like some kind of Chinese production company that's involved here. So this is what Hollywood does behind the scenes. They'll put a Chinese production company involved with the movie. So of course you have to portray the motherland of China in a positive light. But it's like, even that setup there makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
You want a good setup here, in that I don't know if you guys caught this in the basketball team, the Australian, the Chinese Australian guy was saying, in China, it's the collective that is important. It's not the individual. And I'm thinking, oh God, that's just welcome Chairman Mao. What was that? What was that line about, as they're trying to convince me that, yes, let's all go for the collective? That just sounded like de facto Chinese propaganda. But people forget the big controversy when they filmed Memoirs of a Geisha, because you had Zhang Ziyi and you had Michelle Yeoh, I think Gong Li. These were all Chinese actresses, and people were saying, no, you need to have Japanese actresses play these parts because they're Japanese characters. You can't have Chinese actresses play Japanese characters because we're not the same. Here, the movie is saying everyone thought that Alice, I think that's the character's name. Everyone thought that she was Chinese. Turns out she's Korean. Oh, I guess they all look the same. I mean, what kind of message are you really sending? I was really
there was
quite
that
horrified.
joke earlier. It's like, oh, their faces all look the same. That's how you can tell they're Korean.
That's horrifying. That really is
Yeah.
horrifying. Not as bad. I mean, the whole K-pop thing was pointless, and I think that was
I
the
saw
Cardi B.
that bit too, where it was just like, this is what we're doing. Like, so because they're singing that wet ass pussy song from, what was it, Cardi B? Like, that's supposed to be like the comedy bit. It's like, oh, they're singing the really degenerate song. Isn't this funny? And I was like, no,
Let me tell you, that's the first time I've actually ever heard that song. I've never heard that song until now, until that moment, and it was terrible. That song is terrible. I don't know why Ben Shapiro gets ripped to shreds when he read it. Apparently, my Democrat socialist friend thinks it's hilarious, and he should be.
It kind of is, because he's kind of out of touch. But yeah, it's fine.
Well, yeah, he's that way. But
Ben Shapiro is like offensively Jewish, so it does make sense of why.
But I just didn't understand why they needed to go through all of that. You know what it brought back? It brought back 80 for Brady memories, when those four old ladies have to convince the security guard that they're part of the halftime show. I thought, how are they going to whip any of this up? This is nonsense on so many levels.
This goes to I'll go ahead, Rob. Now
I was just gonna say, this is lowest common denominator fucking bullshit. This is like all the sex sounds that what's her face does with Baron Davis, of just like, I love sex. I just want to celebrate it, and I love all the noises. I'm just like, this is for stupid people. This is for beyond idiotic morons.
This is a step above Ass the Movie. This is a step above Ass the Movie. This is where we're at right now. Like, literally. Yep. Like, I mentioned this, like, this is where we're at with comedy at this point, because you wonder why so many comedies out of Hollywood just utterly fail, because they don't know how to be funny anymore, because they've adopted this progressive worldview that, oh, you can't make fun of this people right here, you can't make fun of these people over here, so here's your list of approved jokes here for approved set of people, insert people here, and like I said, it's all progressivism, nauseating progressivism from top the bottom, written into the script. Like, nobody in the real world talks like this. Only people who are in LA and in New York think that this is what real people like look and talk like. And like we're talking about here too, like, I watch numerous South Korean movies throughout the course of the year, right? So this idea that, this is what the Asian representation is of cinema based on like this movie. It's like, we have true representation again. It's like, dude, if I'm legitimately like Korean or Chinese, whatever the case may be, it's like I effing despise this movie because this is for me. This is what I would think like, this is what Americans think we look like. This is what how Americans like view us. Like I can easily see people from like Korea or China or even Japan, if you want to throw them in there too, being like, so this is how we're viewed like in America. This is just a disgraceful movie from top to finish.
It is. It's just unbelievable bad. I wrote this. That big that at the end of that big K-pop number where they quote Cardi B,
Yeah.
and we get to see that infamous tattoo that they've been trying to hide. She yells at one point, "My vagina is the devil," because it's a massive devil tattoo, and apparently inside her vagina as well. Again, it's one of those things where I'm sure they thought it read funny, but it was poorly delivered and it was not funny at all. And I put down in my notes, dreadful beyond what I can imagine. I mean, I was just, it wasn't
Like I
funny.
said, our bar was low going into this. So like we knew that this was going to be bad. We knew this was even going to be a top 5 worst movie of the year. I don't think anyone other of us were prepared for just how awful this movie was. In case you want to know who was responsible for this movie, the people who wrote this film are the same ones who were involved with a little show. Remember Aquafina? Remember that chick? With the Little Mermaid and all that. So apparently she had a show, or she has a show on Comedy Central called Aquafina is Nora from Queens. Like that's literally like the name of the show. The writers of this show are the same ones who write that show. So if you love Aquafina's comedy on Comedy Central, then you'll love this movie. If not, then I mean, I don't know why. I mean, it's pretty much a step down for Broad City, and Broad City was terrible in and of itself. So
what I would say is that Aquafina, it's curious because she did a movie I didn't care for it called The Farewell, which was slightly more respectful of Chinese culture and Chinese people there. And um, we've talked. I think Rob and CS have talked online about the Joy Luck Club. That is actual positive Asian representation because that one was about Asian women, their mothers and daughters, but it was also complex because it wasn't just about them being Asian. It was also about them being mothers and daughters, and the difficulties that they faced. This is the anti Joy Luck Club because this is the lowest. This is horrible representation. You can't just have an Asian cast and have them behave in such a vulgar manner and say, "Oh, this is positive. This is we're
you have
finally
to
getting
understand what else they're promoting here. Like I said, they're promoting the sex positivity movement, LGBTQ, feminism, white privilege, Asian representation. So for all the people reviewing this movie, that's their only metric of what makes a good movie. It's like you have all these things put into the film. It's like, this film's amazing.
It's not, and it wasn't funny. You know what actually worked in this movie, and it's way too the end, is when they actually decided to make it almost a drama. Once she gets, I know you guys didn't see this part. Once she goes to Korea, and apparently the responsible one is the terrible one because all the others are
Right.
good.
They're headed for a risk. You can see it
yeah.
the whole movie that there's going to be
Yeah.
a conflict point.
Yes. But she goes to Korea and then she finds that her birth mother actually, died. So she goes to her grave and then she sees the man that her birth mother married, after all this. And it's very kind of a stab at a touching moment where we get to see the video of the mother and she's addressing her daughter that she never met. So I thought, my gosh, why didn't they just make this into a drama? And that's where the Joy Luck Club situation,
my question would have been, could you have possibly have given this to any other filmmaker who could have possibly made this a better movie? Because you're talking about that one scene, but it's like that's like 5 minute, like it's almost like the eye of the storm. It's like when the rain stops, you get like the temporary like ray of sunshine, and then it's like, oh, okay, when there's like, where did that come? Then the rain comes back. It's like you can't put a scene like that in a movie like this. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, we're going to emotionally grip the audience after we give them 2.5 hours of degenerate or an hour and a half of degeneracy up to this point. It's like, no, that is a completely unearned moment. The fact that it's even put in this movie shows you just how completely lost on the plot you guys are.
Oh, absolutely, because it comes at the very end of the film, and by this point, it just seems to go off in that weird direction, and then we're supposed to have like a big reconciliation with all of these characters. But again, I never saw Allison. I think that's the adopted daughter. I never saw her as the bad character. I saw her as the, well, for the most part, the responsible one. But of course, obviously, in this type of movie, which is so shade in all its characters, because you're going to have the quote responsible one, you're going to have the immature one, you're going to have, and the immature one's always going to be the bestie, and then you're going to have kind of the hanger on and the one that's going to bring in conflict. As I was thinking, okay, which this one is Bradley Cooper, this one's Zach Galifianakis, this one's Ed Helms, this one's Justin Bartha from The Hangover. Like they think that they're trying to do The Hangover. No, The Hangover worked again because these guys are morons and we're laughing at them. We're not laughing with them and we're not sympathizing with them. We think that they're horrible people, but we're laughing at them. Here we're not laughing. We're supposed to maybe align ourselves
and that's
with them.
kind of the other problem here. Hollywood doesn't know what a protagonist actually is anymore. I can compare this with like Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's like the gag with Always Sunny in Philadelphia is that the audience knows that these are terrible people, and that's the joke. Like you're not supposed to identify with them. You're supposed to be like, wow, these people are complete pieces of crap, and when bad things happen to them, that's what makes it funny. But with a movie like this, they want you to identify with these women. They want you to be like, oh, these women are just like me. It's like, if you identify with these people, like I can't even put into words how screwed up your life is at this point. You should not be identifying with these people whatsoever. But because of the people who are in these echo chambers, the woman who wrote this from Aquafina show is like, oh yeah, I'm going to make a movie about me and my inner circle of friends, and everyone's going to laugh. We're going to be relatable to the rest of the world. And you're like I said, just on a completely different planet than everybody else.
But it's so cliched because we get that early montage of the kids going, of the two friends going through school, and of course you have the vulgar one, Lolo. Of course, she's always flipping the bird at every school picture versus Allison, who is just kind of there with her achievement award picture. And I'm thinking, these people would not be friends. All right, these people would not be friends in any kind of world, because you would not want to associate with someone. I mean, you kind of tend to associate with people who are kind of like you. I mean, you could have differences. Like, for example, Gabe is much more into sports than I am. I'm much more into a film than he is. But we still bond because we still have some things in common and we see some things in the same way. Here, these two have nothing in common other than them being Asian.
I'll let Rob go because I actually have a point to that too. But
I just want to say I responded to Seth Rogen. I reposted this. I think it was yesterday, maybe today, where back in March when this trailer came out, I was like, oh great, Asian tokenism, and you know what, I was right. So all I could say is, like, when you present a shallow, stereotypical, almost an insult to Asian culture as we know it.
Yeah.
Who is that movie for? Is it for you and I got to be careful. Is it for you and your friends in Hollywood, who get to laugh that you're denigrating a proud cultural group for shits and giggles in a terrible fucking box office? Okay. Listen, I liked Seth Rogen. I liked The 40-Year-Old Virgin. I liked Knocked Up. I liked Funny People. I think Judd Apatow used to make really good comedies in this vein, in this gross out way that had heart, that had real human characters that you could empathize with, at least on some level, and like the whole Kelly Clarkson scene from The 40-Year-Old Virgin. Like, that's hilarious because he's an idiot who's naively trying to make himself more attractive, and he's scratching at the attempt, basically. So, but there's none of that in here. It's just like degeneracy. It's just like, hey, isn't it funny that women are whores? It's like,
And they literally
Okay.
sing that. They literally sing about how they're whores.
Yeah.
And they
Like
have
literally, the go home emotional moment is one of the girls admitting how much she loves dick. It'll just be like, "Oh yeah, she's so relatable and funny." It's like,
Hey,
yeah, because
before I was cynical, before I was a calloused asshole, guess what? Yeah, I used to be a romantic. As much as that's a hilarious thing to admit. So, congratulations, millennials! You literally ruined any semblance of romance. Awesome, good job.
As a Gen Xer, I hope you can come back to being less cynical. I would just say, look at this. I mean, yeah, the Kat, the actress character says that, yeah, she's proud about how she blew Nick and Joe Jonas, but then said, "Oh, not Kevin." It's like, first off, how is that even funny? It's
oh,
just
that's the point that I wanted to bring up just real quick before we get to our final thoughts here. It's like I said, they don't know how to write a protagonist. Remember a show called Two Broke Girls?
no.
Yeah.
On it
Yes.
was like
On
Whitney
CBS.
Cummings show. Yeah. So there was one episode, and I remember watching this, and I remember just thinking to myself, like, you just killed the entire premise of the show. Like, the show's dead now. And it was one of the episodes where Kat Dennings' character had sabotaged a job interview for the blonde, because the blonde was going to get like a really good job that was going to pay her like six figures and kind of like help her like put her life back together after everything that had happened. And she intentionally sabotaged her job offer, not because that they were doing anything nefarious. It was because, well, if she was going to be successful again, she didn't want to be alone. So she sabotaged the job interview so that she could stay basically down in the dumps with her. And I'm like, your friend would never do that to you. Someone you actually consider a friend would never actually do that to you. And even if they did do that to you, you would never forgive them for doing that. And the episode ends with just them being buddy again. And it's like, oh, isn't this hilarious? It's like, no, like that's not how real people act, like at all.
What do they call that? Lobsters in the pot? Or crabs in the pot, where you try to get out and they won't let you.
Yeah. And then you're supposed to be like, oh, that's my friend. That's my buddy, keeping me down in the same pit of despair like her. It's like, I don't know when this whole dynamic came where you just have like these female friends, and one's just a complete degenerate who doesn't want to do anything to improve her life whatsoever. She's supposed to be the likable character. It's like, you guys got to stop with this. Like, I don't know who you think you're appealing to. You're not appealing to anyone outside of, like I said, LA and Los Angeles with this nonsense. And this is a film that, for whatever reason, got a $32 million production budget, and it only made $5 million in its opening weekend. This film is dead. It's not even going to get anywhere close to making money. I don't even know why this film even exists. For me, 0 out of 5. I mean, 0 out of 5. I'm going to be straight with you here because I've been thinking about this. This very well may be the worst movie I've seen in the last 10 years, because I can't think of anything worse that I've seen. Like, I went back to like my worst movies of the year, the last several years, and it's like, I still think this movie's worse than those.
Yeah, look, I mean, how could you fail in the lines like the blow that literally exploded in my asshole? That's supposed to be comedy gold. Billy Wilder is like, oh yeah, I wish I'd come up with that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad because I'm thinking of people like Michelle Yeoh and Nancy Kwan, a generation or two ago, and even Ming Na Wen. All of these actresses who have been really working for decades to try to have positive representation and just have them seen as multifaceted characters. To see all of these quote strong female Asian women portrayed as these sluts, deranged, horrible people, that is not positive representation. You don't have positive. You can't put a a black face or a Hispanic face or an Asian face and say the most awful things and say, oh, that's representation. That's not what you want. That's not what you want. That's not what I want. I felt awful watching all of this. For me, this is a 0. I wish I might give it a negative, like a -2. This is a movie that actually managed to dethrone Book Club. Book Club was just bad. It was stupid. But this is even worse. I really cannot believe that anyone saw this and thought it was hilarious. All those reviewers that talk, and it's getting like what, 80-90% on Rotten Tomatoes, and all of these
Because
reviewers
no one
that
wants
I've
to say
seen,
anything bad about Asian women. That's the only reason this is getting a positive review.
and the ones
There's
who
so
are
many of
saying that,
them.
yeah, the ones that are saying that Sherry Cola, who played Lolo, the one obsessed with penises, that this is her breakout role and that that she was hilarious. I mean, maybe Melissa McCarthy in Bridesmaids.
Oh
If they're
my
going to
god.
nominate Best Supporting Actress for this, I just wonder what movie did they see. I really want to ask them, what exactly did you find funny about the orgy scene, which was not even funny or particularly graphic? Or what did you find funny about all the people stuffing cocaine up their asses? What is so funny about this? What is so funny about this random white kid running up to these two Asian girls and saying, "Oh, we don't have, you can't play here because we don't have any Asian girls." Obviously, that's just the first thing that this little boy is gonna come up to run up. He's probably no, most children don't even care about race. It's adults who do, and it's sad. And I just want to say, I actually like Dave Matthews Band as
Oh
a
yeah.
college student, but I think it's
Rob, what do you think of this movie?
Yeah. It's not very good. I it's a rarity where I'm the last one to come in with a score, and I can't go any lower.
Yeah.
I'm pretty harsh on movies. Yeah, this is a terrible, awful piece of shit movie. I can't say it's any worse than what Bros, but it's on the same level. It's I don't know.
No,
Like,
this is worse than Bros.
yeah, this is
okay.
worse than Bros.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that lightly either because Bros was terrible, but this is even worse than that for me.
Yeah. And really Seth Rogen has done a terrible job of kind of executing on his prior success as an actor. What little there was beyond Judd Apatow. I mean, The Green Hornet wasn't good. And I can't even. I mean, he kind of petered out with James Franco. He's like, I'm not working with that guy anymore. Oh yeah, you're going to make shitty comedies that nobody goes to see. Sweet.
Yeah,
So I mean,
way to throw your friend under the bus. Like you guys got
and ever
great
since he
friendship
did
values
that,
in Hollywood.
yeah, I think he lost any fans that he had, and now him trying to sort of regain a fan base as being a screenwriter by producing the shit isn't going to help him either. So, yep, this is a 0 out of 5. Um, Nothing good here. I can't even compliment the cinematography or the I don't know, the locations, the what. I mean, Crazy Rich Asians, I was harsh on a couple years ago. That's a masterpiece compared to this piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like in all honesty, I think Dead Eyes was like the only character in this film that I didn't want to push in front of a train at some place. Like if there's one silver lining, she's the only character who's not completely insufferable, but I think everyone else burns your bridge very, very quickly into the film.
Well, that's because she was featured a lot. She was kind of forgotten about for long stretches. I mean, she's the only one who didn't have an orgy. She had a dance off with a basketball player, which I'm sure happens. I know a lot of basketball players are into K-pop and will do these dance offs. No, there's nothing good. There's not one good thing in this movie. The closest would be when they do that last minute. Oh, let's make this into a drama about her finding finding her lost mother. And I thought that would have been much better instead of this trying to be very raunchy and just outrageous. But
Like I
it
said, the
actually.
only way that scene could work is you would have to write a completely different movie than what
Oh
we
yeah,
got here.
yeah. If they had gone that way, we would have had a much better film. But they decided no. We want to show women. We want to show that Asian women can be vulgar. No, they're not. They're not because they're actually just vulgar American women who just happen to be Asian or be of Asian descent rather. They're just awful people. It's just hideous. Slightly very racist in certain levels.
Oh, you didn't love the the hot Cheeto eating with chopsticks? You didn't think that was a cultural touchstone?
No, no.
Okay.
I'm just astonished that anyone could see this movie and say this was hilarious or this is. And I didn't like Bridesmaids either. Apart from the airplane scene, I didn't like that movie
I thought it
at
was
all.
okay, but I
Yeah.
thought it was incredibly overrated. The way people thought it
Oh,
was the film, literally a Best Picture nominee. It's
yeah.
like, what is wrong with you people?
Hey, it helped Melissa McCarthy, but no, there's not one good thing in this movie that I could say it would be worth anyone's time. So I would go a -2. I really would. I can't. I'm just astonished that I found something worse than Book Club. At least Book Club had pretty Italian scenery.
You know what's
Because
funny
this,
is I haven't seen Book Club 2. I haven't seen the Brady movie. I haven't seen Dungeons and Dragons or Renfield, or like the Ghosted movie yet. So
but
that's
no,
how bad this
I don't
movie
think
is.
I don't think
It-
you're missing anything.
Yeah, I know.
no. Well, I haven't seen a couple of those, but this is really the worst movie. It's actually insulting to Asians, I would say, or I just I can't believe that Asians that any Asian American would watch this and say, "Oh yes, this is what my culture is, and this is what I want represented." I would be embarrassed if I were Asian. I would have said I would have left angry.
The only film that I can even think about that may compete with this one for like the worst movie that I've seen in the last 10 years. You guys remember a film a couple years ago called Downhill with Will Ferrell and Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
No.
Oh, the
Okay.
Oh wait a
skiing
minute.
movie?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
Ski.
yes.
Ugh. I heard it was terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was bad. Although the original remake, I mean the original for was it Force
Yes.
Majeure,
Was good.
that was good. But
Yes.
they tried to focus it too much on the wackiness. Try to do more Will Ferrell
Well,
type comedy.
that was misery porn for me. Like that whole thing was like literally like sitting there in a car watching your mom and dad fight for 2 hours, and it's like, is this what this movie's supposed to be? Just absolute misery for 2
Well,
hours?
wait
Like,
for
what are we doing?
Well,
Strays. If
yeah,
you're excited for Will Ferrell, wait for Strays, where he plays a animated dog along with Jamie
oh,
Foxx, who apparently is coming back from his massive stroke.
Yeah.
the trailer had audiences laughing, but I'm like, this is not funny. And it's
Oh no,
curious.
I literally saw when I saw the trailer, I was like, fuck this. It made me so
Yeah.
angry. I was like, really, guys? Again? We're gonna double down with
No.
this shit?
Well, not
Yeah.
only that, but I mean, if you really want some good news, just wait for that Ninja Turtle movie to come out this year. Because guess who's also involved in that one?
Seth
Seth
Rogen.
Rogen. Yep.
And the curious thing is, as I mentioned, the audience was just laughing uproariously at that early moment when the kid says "f you" and then gets punched. But after
Mhm.
that, there was no laughter that I remember in the movie, and I think it's because maybe they went in and expected comedy, and so they started laughing, but then they saw the movie and like none of this is funny. The orgy scene was not funny.
Well,
The
a couple of things just real quick. One, did Spencer actually watch? Have you actually watched The Child yet? I'm going to ask you that question. And two, like this is another thing that they don't know about comedy. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna have the white kid just run up randomly, unprovoked, to say something really racist, and then he gets punched by the Asian girl, and that's supposed to be our comedy. It's like, really, that's your comedy, especially when you do it like 3 times in like the opening scene of like the film. Like that's what I'm supposed to laugh at.
No, and again, I go back to the adopted parents. They're actually being very nice and very positive. I don't know why we're supposed to think that they're horrible people. Because they're trying to be very accommodating and almost apologetic that they're white.
Because they're being presented as people who are assuming characteristics based on the appearance, which guess what? You have to do. So like that's just being a human being. Like you're trying to be respectful, even if and we get that stereotype of the well-meaning white person or whatever, but it's like this is supposedly 30 years ago and people wouldn't act this way. You know what I mean? That's what doesn't make sense is you're trying to use it in a modern context, and yet it's supposed to be 30 years in the past because the girls have to grow up to the
Yeah,
modern day. So
same
it
thing. Yeah,
doesn't
same thing
even
with
land.
Yeah, same thing with Lightyear. If you remember when they were having a same-sex couple in a movie that took place 2 years before the Defense of Marriage Act, it made no sense. But the way I thought of it is, hey, the parents know that their daughter is surrounded by Anglos, so they found another Asian couple. I mean, they found an Asian couple that has an Asian daughter about their age. Hey, maybe they can, show her that you're not completely isolated in terms of race, but they're portrayed as the bad people, and Allison is portrayed as the bad person for wanting to be responsible. And note that the big business deal is irrelevant to the plot because there's no plot in this. I mean, they go there. They get to go explore Beijing, and then they have to go to Seoul. But it has nothing to do. The big business deal has nothing to do with the
There's
story.
no reason for this movie to exist. Let's just be very,
Yeah.
very straightforward. There's
Yeah.
no reason to exist. Nobody watching is going to die on the vine. And I know I said this 2 weeks ago after I saw the blackening. You're going to have to really try to be worse than this movie this year. I mean, if there's two movies that are worse than this year, then it's like we're in trouble. Like we're in deep, deep trouble.
Yeah, I'm absolutely amazed. I thought the book club was going to hold on to the worst movie of the year, and Boogeyman came close to knocking it down. But no, this Joyride just
It's
managed
like
to destroy it.
I told you, like I expected this to be the worst movie of the year, and it's like even at that level, it's like yo, my expectations were way higher than they need to be. Like
It's like that meme. Like our
Yeah.
expectations were low, but holy fuck.
Yeah,
no, oh boy. So yeah, well, like I said, the takeaway from this week is go watch Sound of Freedom and don't go watch Joyride because it's a horrendous piece of crap. And if the child is still playing somewhere near your theater, go watch it or pick it up later this year because it's, like I said, an insanely good movie if you haven't seen that one as well too. So
that's positive. That's more positive Asian representation than the Joyride.
by a lot. So yeah, well, it's funny how Asian culture is portrayed when it's not perverted by American left-wing progressivism. So yeah, go watch that one instead. That's all I'm saying. So here's a little scheduling change here. There's not going to be a show next week. We're actually going to be off next Monday entirely because I'm shuffling the shows around. So this coming Friday, we're doing episode 1 of the Bible Lens podcast. We're doing that on Friday, but moving forward, I'm moving that show to Monday. Then I'm moving this show to Friday. That way we can be a little more timely with our review. So we'll be back on the 21st, and that's when we review Barbie and Oppenheimer on Friday night. That should be same time. So shuffling the shows around just a little bit. So just let you guys know that now. I'll remind you guys throughout the course of the next week. So no show on Monday night. Won't be here on Monday. I'm pretty sure, maybe not Rick, but I'm pretty sure people will still watch Mission Impossible. I think we will talk about that. I'm not sure if this week's Barroom podcast or next week's Barroom podcast we'll talk about the film in a little more detail there. But like I said, I'm shifting a couple of shows around, so that's just to let you guys know what we got moving forward here. Before I let you guys go, let you guys know what we have coming up for tomorrow night's episode of the Barroom podcast. I believe we're at episode 56 now. So there's a lot of things. I'm just going to tell you this right now. We're going to make some people upset tomorrow night on the Barroom podcast, where there's a lot of things we're going to talk about there. Kiki Palmer, who I know is Spencer's favorite actress in the whole wide world, she started a firestorm this week, essentially upsetting her boyfriend by flirting with Usher while her whole ass was out in her dress. We'll talk about that. Jill Scott did a horrendous rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, where she basically just trashed America. We'll talk about that. We'll go into a little bit more detail about the Sound of Freedom and about the media campaign against it. Robert Downey Jr., and who's promoting the film Oppenheimer, is promoting a matriarchal society. And then, of course, we'll talk about the Jonah Hill situation and while people are attacking him for setting boundaries in his relationship, which is absolutely stupid. So that's tomorrow night. That's the Barroom podcast. And like I said, Friday night, I'm going to have a whole new group of people here on Friday night. We're going to be talking about witchcraft in the entertainment industry. I'm really excited about this Bible Lens podcast. Like I said, it's going to start this Friday night, but we're going to eventually move it over to Monday nights. And all I can say is that there's going to be some topics that we're going to discuss on that show that we may lose some followers, we may lose some friends, but it's some very important topics we're going to be talking about in the next few weeks. I'm pretty excited about that. So that's what we got coming up here. Rob, what do you got coming up? I'll go ahead and give the floor to you.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go see Mission Impossible tomorrow, probably in IMAX, because I can. Apparently it's out. So I might actually do a review later this week on YouTube just to kind of get my thoughts out there, even if it's just, a 10-minute thing. But yeah, I definitely want to go see it. I mean, all the Mission Impossible movies are stupid plot-wise, to be completely honest, but the stunts have been just outstanding the last couple of installments. And so I would be remiss if I didn't at least try to see that on the big screen. And then I'm definitely going to be seeing Oppenheimer and Barbie as soon as I can, which I think is the 20th, which is a Thursday. So I'm looking forward to that just because I like shitting on Greta Gerwig, and it really sounds like Barbie is a piece of shit. So, there's that. And Oppenheimer is one of my highest anticipated movies of the year. I got it. I heard Michael Mann's Ferrari is coming out this year. So that's David Fincher, Michael Mann, Martin Scorsese, and shit, there's one more. But yeah, there's a lot of good movies coming out. I'm excited for it. Summer's almost out of the way, so just hopefully got some good stuff coming.
All right. Rick, what you got coming up?
Well, I will not be watching Mission Impossible. I made a pledge, and I'm keeping it. Sorry, guys. But it's just more reviews and just getting ready to just put in more reviews and getting ready for Oppenheimer and Barbie. Hopefully, I can get people to go with me, and that's pretty much it. And my weekly haikus. Just keep looking out for those. That's it.
All right. And like I said, I know Spencer asked a question. Barroom staying on Tuesdays. No changes to the Barroom podcast. We're just moving over the Monday show to Friday and the Friday show to Monday. So that'll be the one change there. That way, like I said, we can cover movies at a little bit more timely fashion. And I have a whole new schedule. I'll talk about with this YouTube once we are off the air about the new schedule and the movies coming out too. And then, like I said, Monday will be the Bible podcast after that as well. So until then, to thank everyone who joined us tonight, Duke Nukem, JEC, Spencer, Johnson was here with us in the chat. I know Cassie, I think, was on Kick for a little bit. She might still be on Kick right now as well. And all the people who joined us tonight on Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night for the Bar Room. Until then, adios, people. Later.